One of my favorite, because it's so just like, it's the shortest sentence. Do your own healing with your oppressed identities. Oh, okay, I'll just go home and, I'll just I think like 60 minutes, I think that's a good smart goal. 60 minutes, heal all oppressed experiences. No, come on, this might take a lifetime. But if you don't do it, you might find yourself doing what the warning states not to, centering yourself. Right? You might be stealing the conversation. Can I give you an example of stealing the conversation that might help you? Right? So, I hope that you've heard this phrase before. Black Lives Matter. Have you ever heard somebody say that out loud? Or does it just only happen on the internet? If it's only ever happened on the internet, I'll say it out loud. Black Lives Matter. That's a full sentence. That's a full sentence, full stop. Okay? Have you guys ever heard the response to this that is not cool at all? That's not cool. That's harmful. It says, if you can't see it says all lives matter.
That was a leaked clip recorded from a student. Now, I don't pay for the subscriptions. I can't afford to. I already pay for enough stuff, and I haven't quite got enough subscribers to even get a penny yet. So make sure you like, share, and subscribe. And if you want, and you can, purchase some of our clothing or put a donation. Now, that was actually part 2. Part 1, I can't get at, like I was saying, because I don't have a subscription to the news service. So I will post it the second that it comes available. I will read to you what they have written, though. It's an exclusive student recording that exposes a teacher indoctrinating kids into the left-wing extremism. It reveals how a Hamilton teacher commandeered a grade 11 English class to lecture students on Black Lives Matter, oppression, and social justice activism. Now, they were leaked. It was shared with True North, and it reveals the grade 11 English class ostensibly about literature, writing, and communication, but it was entirely devoted to discussions of social justice and anti-oppression. And if you caught on to what he was saying is, if you say all lives matter, well, that's immoral. So today's episode, we actually have a whole pile, because of the whole Charlie Kirk thing, Kimmel and all the rest of these, heads are rolling. People are finally starting to have to pay for just the outright lies and hate and discrimination that they're calling for. And it's not necessarily, you have your, and I believe in freedom of speech 100%. But the second that you call for violence or for the removal of somebody's life, you should be removed. You shouldn't have that right. Now, of course, there are tight variations on that, and now this is my opinion. Let me know how you feel in the comments. But when you're dealing with like terrorist organizations where they are literally going out and ending people, fair is fair. I mean, right? Now, that's my opinion. They should be shut down because of their actions have proved that they have lost the right to speech. Now, that's my opinion. Again, let me know how you feel in the comment. But because of everything that's been going on, there's been a lot more discussion on it. And the kicker about it is kind of the ignorance. Even really respectable people are completely unaware of their own words that they're saying. Now, we're going to kind of dabble, we're going to weave all the way through a lot of what's going on in Canada here, from the leader of the Liberal Party pretty much saying what I've been saying, the ex-president of the Liberal Party, saying what I've been saying for the longest time. The Liberal Party of today is not a liberal party. They are a socialist party pushing on the edges of fascism. Now, he doesn't say fascism. I do. I studied propaganda. This is what fascists do. Now, I'm not calling for violence or harm. I'm calling for actions within the law in order to fix and stop what is happening to our country. And that'll never happen if they stay in power. It gives them more time to hide what they've been doing. Kind of like the whole elbows up. They literally used elbows up. They studied it. They leaked it to certain people. Those people, famous, used it. Oh, it was my idea. No, it wasn't. The government actually polled on fear, hate, and division to steal the election. It was only one of the things they did to steal the election. Now, there have been other parties in different countries that have used this. The worst of them being, well, who is the other person that had his soldiers and people put their arm up? It's the exact same. Exact same. Now, we're going to, like I said, dabble into a whole pile here going today. I did want to start off on another article that came out. And again, there's different outlets that have reported on it. I'm going to give Juno the credit because they're a respectable news organization. So the Ontario Provincial Police won't enforce the federal gun confiscation plan. The Ontario Provincial Police will not participate in the Liberal government's controversial firearms confiscation program, mirroring Alberta's earlier refusal to enforce the policy. Public Safety Minister Gary Anasanagri, this is the Tamil terrorist supporter, on Wednesday that the OPP will not participate, forcing Ottawa to negotiate separately with municipal forces like Toronto and Peel. He added that the Ontario Provincial Police make up 26% of the province's policing, so the federal government can still proceed. He said some police organizations have already signed on, but did not elaborate. Of course they won't elaborate. This is disgusting, people. This is the end of a free nation. Understand? I'll just call him Tamir, the Tamir supporter. Tiger repeated that more details were on the way regarding who would collect the guns and if the amnesty would be extended again. Now, there's a whole lot going on with this because the Liberals are going around on all of their left-leaning propaganda outlets saying that this is not forced, that this is not a mandatory thing, which is a blatant lie. So the Tamil Tiger himself previously told True North that Liberals' gun confiscation program was always voluntary. This is a lie. While refusing to elaborate, it appears provinces and police forces were taking that to heart and refusing to participate. Alberta Premier Danielle Smith said her province will not enforce the federal program. She confirms that sheriffs, municipal police, and even the RCMP will not be confiscating Alberta's legally purchased firearms. Smith said she would use every power available to her provincial government to fight the Liberals' gun confiscation scheme. People want their law enforcement to focus on bad guys, and we've got a lot of bad guys out here, she said. We've got organized crime, fentanyl labs, we've got gangs, we've got human traffickers. We don't want police resources going and knocking on people's doors because they didn't voluntarily decide to give up their guns for payment, as the Prime Minister puts it. Firearm critics have rebuked the Tamil Tiger himself for calling the program voluntary. It is not true. His government made it mandatory, said the firearms writer Tim Thurley. He previously outlined the legal alternatives of participating in the confiscation program: exporting or destroying the firearm, hoping for amnesty to continue, having it confiscated without being compensated, or going to prison. Thurley also criticized Carney for misrepresenting the program, which Carney claimed exclusively included assault rifles. Worth noting, Carney refers to an assault rifle which are not impacted by or included in this confiscation program, said Thurley. The misleadingly brand buyback has historically been presented to Canadians as mandatory. The program, introduced via cabinet decree in 2020, eventually banned over 2,500 models of firearms, with costs expected to reach nearly $2 billion. However, the federal government has continuously extended the amnesty period as it has struggled to implement the program. The current amnesty expires on October the 30th. After 5 years, the banned guns remain with their licensed owners who legally purchased the firearms. There were no assault weapons banned since May 1st of 2020. every one of these firearms were for hunting or for sport shooting. That's why they were legal in the first place. CEO of Canadian Coalition of Firearms Rights, Rod Galtaka, told True North. The lies of these people are outrageous. The vice president of the public relations of the CCFR, Tracy Wilson, previously told True North that the program was not as the Liberals are now presenting it. So it's not a voluntary program or a buyback, as the Liberals and some in the media have happily called it. It is confiscation and seizure under threat of imprisonment, she said. Carney has the gall to call it an opportunity for licensed law-abiding firearm owners to turn in their legally purchased property. The penalty for illegal possession of a prohibited firearm is up to 5 years in jail. This is absolute. This whole program is just utter, like, it's beyond socialism. And once again, this is why I use the word fascist, because this is fascist. This is how you destroy nations and you create a totalitarian government. Now, I'm going to move on to this. This is absolutely fascinating. This is just more proof from another real liberal. This is, a real liberal, a person to whom will sit down with somebody from any other party or affiliation, respectable, with an open dialogue and fight for the rights of Canadians, freedom of speech, well, everything that isn't what the Liberal Party has become since its complete takeover and turned into the fascist green cult that it is today.
Oh, two actually, with this guy, Stephen LeDrew. Now, I got to tell you something, because I think his story is really important. You were president of the Liberal Party of Canada.
That's true, for 5 years.
You were
no salary.
Journalist. You have worked extensively with the Liberal Party.
No, wait a second. No, journalists would say I'm not a journalist because I'm a lawyer. Practiced law for years and years.
You were a broadcaster.
Yes, that's true.
Okay. So, you are very critical of the Liberal Party.
Yes.
Why?
Because it's no longer the Liberal Party. It's closer to the NDP Party or even the Socialist Party. And the Liberal Party that I grew up with, that I led, was democratic, and it was capitalistic. It had a conscience, but it believed in good government, effective government that's not big and not in people's faces all the time and not trying to control everybody. Justin Trudeau debunked the Liberal Party, and what's left of the Liberal Party is powerless over politicians. It used to have an influence on Martin, on Trudeau's father, on the other prime ministers, but the Liberal Party now is completely gutted and doesn't stand for anything except for the remnants of Trudeau's socialistic views, where people just do what the government says.
Okay, so two more questions, because I know you got an interview coming out here. As a former broadcaster and current broadcaster for independent news, how much of a role does government-subsidized media play in shaping people's minds, especially who are over 55, who only watch mainstream media, in thinking what they think?
I'll give you one example. That's in the last few days, when the Prime Minister, before Parliament started, said, I've got these 5 projects, these 5 major projects are going to kickstart the economy in Canada. And the mainstream news, big 5 new projects. Headlines in the Toronto Star, headlines here and there. And then people started to delve into it because of independent news, Michelle. And they realized these projects were already approved. They're already get going. Not always shoveling the ground, but this bureaucracy that Carney created to create more jobs is just that, another bureaucracy. And that the mainstream press didn't report that these were in fact bogus new projects.
He said it, not me. I already told you. I just say I told you so. But listen, okay, so where does Mark Carney fall if he just has all this wonderful economic experience and his resume is so impressive? How do you, as a former president of the Liberal Party,
yes,
give him his grade? How is Mark Carney doing?
I think that he is following in the footsteps of Justin. I'm told he starts meetings on time, and he is not irreverent like Justin was, but he really is doing nothing more than creating a bigger government even than Justin had. And I think that Canadians need an election. We got fooled in the last election. They need a new one.
You got fooled in the last election. Just as you were fooled 10 years ago when they threw the puppet Trudeau out there. This isn't the Liberal Party. This is where the vast amount of people within my generation really started to understand that the West had to leave. Not only did we have zero control over our own destiny because we're irrelevant, but when the propaganda was so easily bought off, and when the largest and most consequential party of Canadian history, they have had more ruling years than any other party, could be taken over by that type of a socialistic cult, that sent shudders through my body and a lot of the other people within my generation. Let me know how you feel in the comments, and Quebec saw this with Pierre, which we did too, but I was so young at the time. And back then, of course, there was lots of talk about separation, but I really didn't know how I felt towards it until it hit me when I was my father's age, when it hit him from the first major socialist that took over the Liberal Party, which is Pierre Elliott Turd. Now, let's move on a little wee bit further. This is Yves Blanchette. We're going to go over the presser he had here today. And, well, I'm going to show you how somebody who is politically astute, and he's a very bright man, there's no doubt about it. But let's break down how he can be incredibly brilliant, but yet fall flat on his face when it comes to everyday life and reality. And again, propaganda. Propaganda has a lot to do with it. And now I'm not going to hold him harsh, because the way he worded it, well, you know what? Let's just play the clip off. We'll go from there.
The first is on the federal government calling for review and how from the Supreme Court on the use of the notwithstanding clause. And one of the things that they had said in it was that the continual use of the clause by a government results in an irreparable impairment of Canadians' rights. I wanted to get your opinion on it.
There's always been a difference of culture in Quebec and in Canada. In Quebec, we do believe that there is also such a thing as collective rights. So what the government wants to do, basically, is to fight secularity of the state as we see it in Quebec. And by the way, protection of the French language as we want to do it in Quebec. But instead of saying so, in a transparent fashion, he said, oh, I have a problem with the notwithstanding clause. And if he does win this idea of not using it before the implementation and not allowing it to be used more than that many years, presently 5 without a possibility of renewal of it, he will basically kill the intention of the Assemblée nationale du Québec to protect the very precious value of secularity of the state and the very precious French language in Quebec. But the government does not seem to have the courage to say what its real intention is. People will understand what's happening now and will act accordingly.
And as a separate question, following up on what my colleague asked about what you expect that Mr. Carney will be coming back with from Mexico and how that could or may not help the North American Free Trade Agreement renegotiations, or CUSMA, I should say, when you consider that at the beginning of this process, it seemed like we were not going to be trying to really side with Mexico. Do you think that this will help? And could Canada and Mexico maybe team up and try and get a better deal out of the U.S.?
Now, he was down in the States, and he brought this up during question period, on how the Americans are incredibly disappointed. They're sending down these goofballs, the same ones that were negotiating our agreement with Trump the last time. That even though there was a settlement, and Canada got their asses kicked, by the way. I mean, sure, we may have got a lot of DEI policies. How'd that work out? Elbows up. But it not only showed weakness, but it showed just the complete incompetence and how far left and socialist our government was. This has been scaring the States. You got to remember, they had a file on Pierre Elliott Trudeau. They were incredibly worried because he was going around the world hanging out with a bunch of dictators, Cuba, China, all the rest of them, and trying to nationalize and socialize, trying to do what the party today is doing. It's just they're doing a different way of doing it. They're doing a corporate takeover through legislation, whereas Pierre was trying to legislate his way to just take everybody's resources. You don't own anything. You will never own anything. You know, you're going to, whatever you make, we're going to take X amount from you, a total socialist society from the government down. This is different. This takeover is now global cartels. They're literally bending us over and, yeah, being really nasty through legislation. They're using our own government against us to sell out our nation. Trump and their administration knows it. And Carney isn't going down there. Why? Because Carney is one of the top. He's one of the top dogs pushing for this. Greed, people. This is greed. Dark evil is what this is. His book values might as well be relabeled Mein Kampf, because it's the same type of thinking. And this guy is our prime minister. So he let loose on him today in Parliament.
At the very beginning of the whole process, when Mr. Trudeau said that we could drop Mexico in the deal, it was very bad for our businesses, but it was very bad as a message. He should, and Mr. Carney should instead try to add allies to an amount so important that the market it represents is more important than the American market, and that the GDP it produces is more important than the American GDP. And all those persons and countries together facing United States would have got a much better leverage. This is not what happened. And I suppose that Mrs. Scheinbaum did not like it so much. So there might have been a cold moment. If the relationship is improved, that's good. If there are significant intentions, might be good, but I will wait for it to be to come with means and projects, clear projects and means in order to achieve it. We must keep in mind, however, that our relationship with Mexico is the fifth in importance in matters of trade. 80% of what Canada exports is to United States. It will let you calculate approximately the importance of the Mexican market for Canada. So let's improve that. But in no way could we compare the Mexican market for Canada and the American market for Canada.
Now, he's absolutely correct. If they could have come together earlier and discussed as a whole the impacts that it was going to make, it would have given all of the countries a lot more power to negotiate. But they couldn't do that because the nations are divided. Within NATO, they're divided. You have your extreme left. You got to remember, liberalism is like, there's very little real liberal governments left on the planet today. They're down to a handful. most of them have become bought out by the global cartel. This is something Trump knows. This is what he's fighting. So there was no way for them to come together. And that was all of our own self-destruction. Now, in the same aspect, he's also correct in saying, be very careful what you're doing down there, because you've already PO'd Sheinbaum and really, really PO'd Trump the last time they went to Mexico, announcing all these big plans. They're going to sign their own agreement. They're going to exclude the United States. Trump went, oh, really? And thus, he nailed us with more tariffs. Sheinbaum was on the phone immediately going, no, we're not doing this. They got a reprieve. Canada? Nothing. Why? Because of the global cartel. All Carney cares about is securing the last 10 years of his manipulation using legislation to slowly take over our nation. He don't care about you people. He don't care. The new Liberal Party doesn't care about you. They are using your own tax dollars through businesses like McKinsey to run polls behind closed doors to manipulate people using their right arm, the strongest tool they have, which is propaganda, to repeat the same thing over and over, to lie, to deviate, to deceive, all to hold power and give them the ability to pass some of the, actually I won't say some, the worst legislation in our history. Everything this government has done in the last 10 years must be admonished, must be removed. Now, as for the U.S., how's the U.S. feel? Well,
the most unexpected, and we're going to get right into the meat of the stuff that we want to talk about today, okay? I'm disappointed that I came to Canada, a Canada that it is very, very difficult to find Canadians who are passionate about the American-Canadian relationship, okay? You ran a campaign where, it was anti-American, elbows up, me too, it was an anti-American campaign. That has continued. That's disappointing. I talked to a lot of business people. They are passionate about the relationship because they recognize rebuilding ecosystems and rebuilding the kind of economic relationships that we have. As some people talk about, we'll go other places. Kind of like, that's hard. Plus, this one works pretty well. We've created a lot of prosperity and wealth, high quality, high paying jobs by working together on both sides of the border. Like I said, I'm passionate for it. The business community is passionate for it, but they're not very public about it.
most people I know aren't boycotting American. 99% of the people I know are not boycotting American. We never fell for it. We knew what elbows up was, especially out west, because we've seen what the East does to us for too many generations. Once bitten, twice shy. And when it comes to intergenerational bites, it doesn't take much for us to smell bullcrap, which we do. Now, I'm going to play the last English question given to Eves. And this is what I mean by how he fell kind of flat on his face. And then we're going to prove it.
That in English on Jimmy Kimmel, and I'm sure you can be just as eloquent in English on it.
I'm sure I cannot be just as eloquent in English, but I will quote Voltaire, great mind of the Lumière in France. And I will not do American politics. It's their business. But Voltaire said, I profoundly disagree with what you say, but I will fight to the end for you to have the right to say it.
I'm sure, and hopefully, there's a French media outlet, maybe that's watching this, bilingual, or maybe on their own, realizes what Kimmel really is. This is a clip that was sent to me a long time ago. This is one of the things that I was saying in a previous episode, that you have to understand, this is Kimmel. This is what he does. This is what he represents. And tell me, in what way should this have been allowed?
Hospitals get any more overcrowded, they're going to have to make some very tough choices about who gets an ICU bed. That choice doesn't seem so tough to me. Vaccinated person having a heart attack? Yes, come right on in. We'll take care of you. Unvaccinated guy who gobbled horse goo? Rest in peace, Wheezy.
Now, did you hear his audience? They're cheering for the end of life for people who didn't want to be forced to take the poke, which now there is so much evidence proving it was all a scam. It started with all the lefty leanies were saying it. Oh, it's proven in science. If you get the pokey poke, you won't spread it. And then what was the biggest super spreader? The pokey poked. That's called real science. But you don't hear mainstream apologizing for their lies. And then you had people like this. This is what created what these governments want. Fear, hate, and division, so that you are a good little soldier and you don't use your brain and you just listen to what you are told. That goes against everything that it is to be human and what it used to be Canadian. Now, here's a little bit more propaganda that a lot of people need to see. So Carney had this press conference. He staged this housing announcement in Nepean. Guess what? Not only is it going to cost $3.25 million per home, that his corporations, all of them, from the people who give the loans, to the people who build the houses, to the people, even everything, he's making millions of dollars, and their buddies, all of his, Laurentian elite and global cabal, are going to rake in huge profits. The whole thing was a scam on scene. Check this out.
In Nepean, I am at the location of Prime Minister Carney's housing announcement a few days ago, and there is nothing here. So all those buildings were brought in just for the photo op.
Where's mainstream? That is a propaganda arm, people. If they refuse to at least correct and show the truth, then they are no good for nothing. Make sure you like, share, and subscribe. People need to see this, especially the people in Nepean. They were sold out. They were sold a lie. Unbelievable. Now, we're going to move on to this whole Antifa thing. Now, out west, this guy is absolutely despised. Now, Antifa they're going to pass the motion. They're going to label them a T organization down in the States, which Canada should beat them to it. Canada should beat the States to it and lay down some serious laws stopping these hate groups, stopping these violent protesters who know they're wrong. Why? Because they hide their faces. If you don't even have the moral integrity to show your face while voicing an opinion, everything you spew is crap. So they got to start laying down a law. I think the first law is no more covering your face. Period. Without a doctor's note. And the best part about that is you'll find out who the bad doctors are. Because once they start checking people, and then they say, oh, okay, you got a note, and this is your doctor, and they take a picture, and they say, perfect, and then they go and they check the doctor. And then they find out, is he lying or not? This cleans up a lot of the system, people. But Canada won't do that because this is the arm funded by the Liberal and Democrat parties. This is their machine. They go out and they cause chaos. The fourth major component to running a socialist or fascist government. The first three create fear, hate, and division. Antifa fulfills all of them, but their major job is chaos. It allows their propaganda to film and then take video clips and sound bites and make the good side, the people who are showing their faces, look bad. And then these people are afraid to go out because they're afraid that their face is going to be exposed and they're going to be lied about, twisted, and then oppressed. Do you see how this works? This is what they do in totalitarian regimes. This is the stuff they've been writing about. Like, this is Marxist 101. These people take these books and they learn from them on what to do instead of what Orwell actually was trying to get across. This is what you try to look out for to stop. These people use them as a text of knowledge on what to do to take power. These people are evil. This guy, he needs mental help. Big time.
It's weird when people ask me about Antifa because, like, do you think we're pro-fascist? That's weird. Okay, we're done now.
So you do stand shoulder to shoulder with Antifa.
Well, would you expect us to be pro-fascist? Are you pro-fascist? Are you pro-fascist?
No, Antifa is
anti-fascist. So
a militant
you're either
organization.
pro-fascist or you're anti-fascist.
So QP stands shoulder to shoulder with Antifa. Do I have that right?
Do you think that unions should have precedent over parents for decision making of kids?
Now, that's DC Media. Thank you very much, Chris. He's always there. The guy does awesome. If you don't know who he is, as always, I put all the links in my description. Click on them, make sure you like, share, and subscribe. We need all the help we can get. That's the only way we can crush propaganda. And we've got to do it quick because Carney is trying to push an election. He's trying to secure a majority government, which will mean the end of Canada as we know it. Now, I'm already pretty sure that BC and Alberta are gonna go, but with him pushing this notwithstanding clause, this is the race he's against. He wants to be able to change anything he deems unworthy of him, which means taking away your rights. And that includes your right to leave the country, your right to even vote on it, your right to have your own government that you elected not be allowed to veto, to stop bad legislation from affecting its citizens. It pretty much takes away your vote. You become irrelevant. Kind of like how Saskatchewan and Alberta has been since the creation of Canada. Now, this went down a few days ago. I want to report on it, but of course lots of other stuff came on. But this is really important. Radio Canada reporter was relieved after an on-air anti-Semitic remarks. Now, everything's in French, so I'm not going to play it for you and then just read over the transcript. Instead, I'll actually read to you this article because it's very well done. Elisa Pisare told viewers that Jews finance much of the American politics and that Hollywood is run by Jews. The broadcaster issued an apology and relieved her of her duties as federal and communal leaders condemned the comments. Do you think? So they have suspended the reporter Elisa Pisare after she made a series of statements on air that Jewish advocacy groups and government officials described as classic anti-Semitic tropes. The public broadcaster apologized, said the remarks violated its journalistic standards, and relieved Sare of her duties pending further review. The comments were made during a September 15th broadcast of the RDI program Sur le Train. Asked to explain why many Americans remain staunchly supportive of Israel, Sare said in French that my understanding, which is shared by several analysts here in the United States, is that the Israelis, in fact, it is the Jews who finance much of American politics, the super PACs. There is really a huge machine behind it, she continued. The big cities are run by Jews. Hollywood is run by Jews. The language drew immediate criticism. Radio Canada issued a written correction and apology saying Sare's comments constituted stereotypical, anti-Semitic, erroneous and damaging allegations against Jewish communities, and that the remarks contravene its editorial standards. The public broadcaster said it had decided to relieve the journalist of her duties until further notice. Until further notice? Pardon me? So there's a chance she could be back on the air? This is the ridiculousness of your tax dollars, people. Heritage Minister Stephen Guilbeault publicly condemned the broadcast, calling the words pernicious anti-Semitic tropes with absolutely no place on Canadian airwaves. He said the language of that kind risks normalizing hatred when used by journalists or anyone in positions of trust. Funny, coming from a guy who passed legislation saying, well, if you say anything good about the oil and gas, or you claim anything about the oil and gas that's in a good way, we're going to take away that right to speech, and we're going to charge you, and you're going to go to jail. Along with a bunch of other crazy legislations they've been trying to pass, including the censorship that I get hit with every single episode. Ridiculous. This guy is just a waste of skin. Now, again, I'm going to post the article. I urge you, read it over. It's the insanity of what is the CBC. So this is how fascism and socialists take over. Fascists and socialists take over. They use your money, kind of like with the elbows up scam, where they run polls, they don't tell anybody, they use your tax dollars, and they try to figure out which way possible to create fear, hate, and division in order to ascertain votes. But behind the scenes, they're also working on ways to train the youth, to brainwash the youth at an early age. I talked about this already on previous episodes, and I think it was the last one where I actually showed documents that they were using TikTok to brainwash kids. This is what they did with the We Charity. This is what they do. These people are just, they're so morally void. The corrupt souls that these individuals carry, it's just, I don't know how they can do it. I honestly don't know how you could sleep at night knowing that you're going against everything that it is to not only be a Canadian, but to be a good human. It's disgusting. Newly released federal records reveal that more than $1.04 billion in public money has been directed to diversity, equity, and inclusion programs across 29 departments and agencies since 2016. Newly released federal records reveal that blah, blah, blah money, blah, 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 sorry, I hate it when they repeat that. The documents tabled in the House of Commons in response to an order of information outline the range of spending that stretches from national initiatives to local community projects. Among the larger allocations was a $25 million contribution from the Department of Industry to the Canadian Gay and Lesbian Chamber of Commerce to strengthen Canada's entrepreneurship ecosystem to be more accessible to the LGBTQ small businesses. Agriculture and Agri-Food spent $90 $2,649 on a project in London, Ontario to harvest, process, and store cultural vegetables aimed at strengthening food security in equity-deserving black communities. Public Safety Canada directed $490,000 and change toward an immigrant youth camp in Charlottetown, PEI, designated to teach cooking skills using culturally relevant recipes. The records also show about $1.1 million was spent in the last year alone on in-house DEI training and coaching for federal public servants. Conservative MP Vincent Neil Ho, who requested the figures last spring, said the sheer scale of the spending raises questions about whether taxpayer dollars are being used effectively and transparently. He noticed that the government has not yet set clear metrics for measuring the results of the programs, making it difficult to access whether the money is achieving its intended goals. Well, yeah, that's what this Liberal Party has done. There's zero transparency, people. Zero transparency. Let's hear it right from the lady herself.
Commissioner, it's a pleasure to have you back here. Before I get into some of my questions about your work, I'd like to ask you for your thoughts about ours. Our committee issued a report last year, and I wonder if you have any comments you'd like to share with us about it.
As you saw in the submission that I've made, I agreed with most of the recommendations made by this committee after your review. I think that the government needs to review those reports made by your committee and my submissions, including what they received from the public and during the consultations. And I'm hoping that they will start from there and not start from scratch.
Thank you very much. In your 24-25 annual report, you wrote that some institutions neither implemented your legally binding orders nor went to federal court, quote, breaking the law, end quote, forcing you to seek writs of mandamus. Are you standing by your finding that certain federal institutions have broken the law by ignoring your orders? And can you confirm whether the Department of National Defense is the worst offender?
I have issued 8 mandamus applications because of 8 orders that were not contested in court. It is the institution's right to not comply with an order as long as they challenge it in court. When they refuse to do so, I have been forced to take action myself. Out of those 8 mandamus, I think the National Defense has received about 6 of them. I have to say, though, good news is the National Defense is doing much better. I don't know if it's because of these mandamus application, but this year we've received the lowest amount of complaints against National Defense. It's not even in my top 5 institutions that are not meeting the act this year.
So they're breaking the law less?
Yes.
Oh, well. There's something to be said for progress. You launched an investigation into ArriveCan over allegations related to the destruction of records that were subject to the act. Is destroying or deleting records that are subject to access to information requests a breach of the act? And do your preliminary findings suggest that the law was broken in this case?
With respect to ArriveCan, I'm sorry, but I won't be able to talk to you about the investigation. It's still ongoing. This is a very complex investigation, and as you just mentioned, including very serious allegations. So my office, it's part of our priority this year to finalize that investigation, and I will be happy to report on that investigation later this year. With respect to the allegation of destructions, it is a criminal act if it's intentional and if it's meant to remove the information from somebody's accessing it. So I cannot tell you at this point what our findings are with respect to ArriveCan.
In your 2024-2025 report, you said that nearly 30% of requests across government missed legislated timelines in the previous year. In plain terms, does missing the deadline on almost a third of requests mean that the government writ large is failing to adhere to the law?
It is.
Now, this is important because this is what they've been doing. Not only have they been hiding documents, but because they have the power of the media, they control the narrative. They purposely withhold documents past certain points that could be crucial to falling of the government. And then when they do, they'll either release them in blanketed form, meaning they'll release kind of an overture of it without actually giving the documents they needed, and slowly let bits and pieces of what happened out. So by the time the entire story comes out, which you never hear the entire story, but by the time enough of the story comes out of what they were really doing, they're back in power. And their news will give you a very quick blah, 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 and usually they'll do it at, the 3 o'clock news hour when nobody's watching. And then they can say, well, no, we reported on that. Propaganda people. Barrett is very good at purposely questioning people, always keeping the narrative in mind. He understands how socialist governments work and propaganda. I give kudos. He's one of the best MPs out there. There's a few that conservatives have that are great. And I also want to state, she did say that this has been an ongoing problem since it was created. Governments have been slowly allowing themselves to get away with hiding more and more information. But the worst culprit in our history has been this new socialist liberal party.
And what do you think is the remedy that's needed?
Well, currently the Act is requiring institutions to respond within 30 days of an access request or to ask for an extension. 30% or 33% of these requests are not being, that timeline is not being met. There's all kinds of factors. Consultations with other institutions taking way too long is one of them. Mismanagement of information and resulting in huge size of access and documents having to be processed is another one. There's a lot that needs to be done to the system, as I said in my submission in 2020, a lot to be done to this act to modernize it. Reducing consultations to a certain amount of time would be one of the way to reduce timelines as well.
Government's plan for modernization is not sufficient. I think those were your words. But on the stick that might need to be used here, because I don't think that there's any amount of carrots that would move the needle. What do peer countries do? What is the harshest or most effective measure that's used for compliance in other countries? Are we an outlier here? It seems extraordinary to have a government that seems to be flouting this very important law.
Unfortunately, I've met with other colleagues from around the world, and we're not the only one having issues implementing the act. Whether or not we have a good, perfect act, it's in the implementation that really we can see if a country is doing well. Sanctioning public servants is not happening in any other countries because it's really difficult to know which person is responsible ultimately for the decisions.
The buck stops with the minister at the end of the day.
That's what I think. I think the head of the institution should be responsible.
Thank
Wonderful.
you, Commissioner.
Thank you, Commissioner. Ms. Church, you have 6 minutes.
We're in big trouble here, people. You heard it right from her mouth. And the whole scam. And you got to remember, there's still tens, if not hundreds of thousands of documents leading to the green scam that the companies that are involved still haven't been exposed. on all of the money that they stole from taxpayers. This is why Parliament was shut down. This government hasn't done anything. It's the same party. And I know a few of the companies Carney is invested in. And again, this is huge because this goes to what you would call the Laurentian elite. I have pointed this out on previous episodes, like when we were talking about the strike with the flight attendants. The people who sit on the heads of these boards, they're all the Laurentian elite. They got their feet soaking in the sweat of Canadians as they reap the dollars and just hand out hundreds of thousands, millions, billions of dollars to their shareholders, to their companies, to themselves. And there's no culpability. There is no way for them to ever be held to account. We need serious change. This is what the West is aiming for. To set into law so that a politician can never ever have the ability to do what the Liberal Party has done or even become. Total transparency. Now, the Liberal Party likes to think of themselves as the scientific. Conservatives are anti-science, although they've been wrong about every single thing they have done. The Liberal Party has used the excuse of science and never had credible science, ever. Till this day, nothing they have said has been proven scientifically. But what they have done is by implementing the socialist rules, they have slowly degraded the quality of science that used to come out of our once great nation. We were on the cutting edge of so many great things. We have cured ailments and diseases. We have created all types of technologies. All of this is coming to a halt. Now all you hear about is green tech, and none of it answers any problems with climate change. It just gives excuse for investors like Carney to reap billions of our tax dollars while they brainwash our kids. Listen very carefully.
My question is directed at Mr. Pinker. So, do you agree that universities should be a forum for the free exchange of ideas, including discussion of dissenting opinions?
Absolutely. Essential.
It is essential. You mentioned DEI quotas are a form of discrimination, effectively, and effectively a form of reverse discrimination. Do you agree that doing this sort of DEI checkbox and all these affirmative statements that they're not requiring in Canada has a chilling effect on research, because you're effectively shutting off half of the population from being able to participate in an honest way?
I think it can chill research in two ways. One of them is by excluding sectors of the population based on their sex or ethnicity or race. But the other is, on top of the preferences, there's a regime that it is a criminal offense to criticize the policy of preferences. We've seen that in the United States, we've seen that in Canada, where people who cast doubt on the policy, who argue against it, get censured, get fired, get canceled, and that adds another layer of chill, probably a more severe chill.
Yeah, well, that's really unfortunate to hear. And that these liberal top-down policies effectively shut out half the population from being able to participate, and effectively blocking high-quality research from being produced at some of the top institutions in the country. You know, when it comes to, let's say, astronomy or physics or even medicine, you know, you mentioned that it's a zero-sum game out in research. There's limited government resources to be granted. Shouldn't the best person for the job get it? Looking at, or the person with the best potential? Let's say we're doing cancer research and we're trying to find a treatment to a type of cancer that could save many, many lives, millions of lives potentially. Shouldn't the best research go, the grants go to the best person or the person with the best potential to achieve those aims?
Yes, I believe that is the most defensible policy. Now, at the margins, there are often judgment calls where there are proposals where at the end of the day you throw up your hands, I don't know which one is better. If in cases like that you tilt it so that underrepresented groups get the benefit of the doubt, I don't think that is harmful as long as they are within the envelope of the best quality research.
But the race and the sex of the researcher probably shouldn't have any effect on the quality of the research. We're studying cancer, we're studying physics or something like that. So by imposing this top-down ideology from liberal ideology, it almost feels like that they're trying to, it's political, they're politicizing it, and they're implementing it into our great institutions, which is universities and colleges. Do you agree that it is potentially a venue for liberal ideology to permeate and to implement it?
Well, I guess I would have to ask whether liberal has a capital L or a small L in this context.
Capital L.
Yes. Well, I don't want to single out one.
See? The new Liberal Party isn't liberal. They're a completely socialist, fascist party. Real liberals. You could tell by his answer. Liberal. He knows what a real liberal is. A real liberal isn't elbows up. A new liberal left the party years ago. The smart, educated, not educated in school, educated meaning paying attention to their surroundings, seeing what's going on, reading the actual documents, not believing what they see, not believing what they hear, but believing what they know. Real liberals, like real conservatives. The Liberal Party is gone.
One of the parties, because many of these policies, at least in the United States, have taken place under leadership of both parties. But you know,
but it does have an effect of imposing a political view onto
one can imagine
researchers.
certain circumscribed exceptions. If there is research, for example, in anthropology or in culture or in history on a particular group, then common sense might say that sometimes a member of that group could add specialized expertise. But in the cases you mentioned, astronomy, cancer research, climate change, and so on, then indeed the sex and race should not make a difference.
Now, it was a great question. He does a very good job of trying to stay apolitical within it. But you could sure tell, especially at the end, the little chagrin he's got. Because he's in the House, because he's a professor, he really has to watch what he says, because he lives in a world of cancel culture. All of these people right now screaming about how Kimmel just got booted off the air. The media has spent more time talking about Kimmel and defending him than they have Charlie Kirk. Kimmel is walking the streets. He's enjoying his multi-million-dollar home. He still has the ability to hug his family. But nobody's doing the research and actually looking at what he's said and the division he's caused and the people who are brainwashed by his program, who will eventually do harm to somebody because they feel as though somebody else's words or actions, especially when it came to the pokey poke, was the end all of humanity. I hope you enjoyed today's episode. Please make sure you like, share, and subscribe. I am trying to get back the major algorithm embattlement that I have endured since the Chrystia Freeland Exposed episode. Now, I fight propaganda all the time. I am not the typical independent. I don't believe in, well, pandering, and you'll notice I do try to change some words, especially right now, because I'm trying to get back out of the suppression that I'm suffering. So I'm saying the words like pokey poke, but every now and then I still slip and throw the reality in. But once I get enough viewers up and the ability of them to hold me back and to restrain the truth from you, I will start to open up a hell of a lot more. So please make sure you like, share, and subscribe. And don't forget, check your subscription. Make sure that YouTube didn't accidentally punt you off of it. I urge you to please check the previous couple episodes. It will help regain and slap away the algorithms that are holding me back. And let's pray that more and more people fight like we are, like you are, to get the truth out. Sorry, so sorry, just the truth. Just the facts. Until next time, I'm Alias Tagay. You've been watching the Canadian Citizen Journal. Stay informed.